Are you guys good? Hold on.
Greetings, my humanitarians. I'm Cole Williams, and you're watching How's the Houseless, Music and Action.
Muted.
In New Orleans, activists are demanding city officials expand a program to provide hotel rooms for unhoused people during the pandemic. This is community organizer Cole Williams.
This week, we're going to be at Duncan Plaza every morning at 8 a.m. demonstrating with the homeless in front of City Hall. There's a deep lack of concern for the houseless, and there's a deep lack of concern about what's happening to Black people during this pandemic.
A federal
The Black Panthers coined the phrase "power to the people" during the freedom movement.
Yeah. We're live.
Today, right now, in this moment, we are on call to uplift those people that you don't make eye contact with and pass on the streets, the least of ours. We gotta dig deep, and we gotta dig deeper. We gotta scream, we gotta shout, we gotta bang on doors, and we gotta let them know to empower the people. We must give power to the people.
I'm going to come out of this early, if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
How's everybody feeling? You good?
Yeah.
Great. Ready to go? Yeah.
It's going to be a slow fade now for the sound, which you probably can't hear.
Nope.
And then here we go. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Fabian Brown here with Rope-a-Dope and joined with, just some remarkable, significant individuals. And I just wanted to share that we're using this platform, Vadim, to essentially help people spread their word, spread their message of what's on their hearts and on their minds. We're using this platform to, communicate with people and really just to connect people in many different ways, as we've done for the past 20-something years. With Rope-a-Dope, we're just using this platform and leveraging it to spread the word even further. And I'm super, super excited about, maybe I'll call it part 2 of this series, House the Houseless, the music and action with Miss Cole Williams. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Miss Cole Williams, she's a musician and WWOZ radio host, a very powerful individual, conducting a powerful movement and direct action in the city of New Orleans, really just defending the rights of the unhoused people. In recent years in New Orleans, housing activists created a political space for people to come together. Following frequent street demonstrations at City Hall, activists succeeded in getting the city to provide emergency housing in empty hotels. Now, grassroots activists are renovating city-owned blighted houses with unhoused people by their side. Organized by the Greater New Orleans Citizens Relief Team, they are asking the city government and those individuals with construction skills to assist in this amazing, dramatic, and impactful project. Cole is leading this struggle with deep community participation and her powerful songs of love and struggle, as we heard coming into the program. Her new album with the Cole Williams Band, Give Power to the People, puts them in the tradition of Jill Scott, creating songs that reflect with everyday experiences and hopes of Black people all around the world. These songs are anthems of the movement for Black lives, and certainly for people struggling to make sense out of this dangerous and hopeful moment. Listeners are invited to observe on Web2 platforms on YouTube. We're streaming on Twitter, or they can participate right here in VR at the Rope-A-Dope Lounge in Vatham. VR participants are granted microphone access to speak directly with our panel today, and discussion will continue around this. So that's my little intro, and that's my script. I'm going to go off script here for a second, and just thank you, Cole, for one, your patience, two, your energy, your enthusiasm, and your passion to do significant things, in this world. You're on a very short list of artists that I get to work with that when they create their music, it's much more than what's on their mind. It's also what's on their heart, and you've put all that together in your music and have such a great heart for moving things forward and helping the unhoused. So with that, Cole, welcome to the Rope-A-Dope Lounge.
Fabian, you just flattered me. Like, I'm gonna have to buy you dinner after this. You make me feel so good, but I'm so appreciative. It's just a space of love because I appreciate what you and Lewis and Rope-A-Dope do. It's not every label that actually acknowledges the component of an artist that really has deep community roots and wants to use their music to make a change. So I'm honored. I'm grateful to be on this list of musicians that has a passion for the community and then finds a way to put it into the music. Because if I can't share it, what's the point? We keep going in these negative cycles, but let's have solution-based cycles where we share everything equally, all our gifts, our skills, our talents, and our resources. And, right now in 2023, until we erase all injustice, I think it's going to begin at the bottom up with the unhoused. So I want to take a moment to introduce our guest today, Ellie Duff first, but for me, Ellie is my Ellie. I met Ellie, I haven't shared this story with Ellie, but I met Ellie a couple of years ago when my organization, the Greater New Orleans Citizens Relief Team, we wanted to do something during Hurricane Ida. We'd been focused with the unhoused, but all of a sudden, we were all just in a space where we needed extra. Everybody in New Orleans just needed electricity. Some people needed more along the lines of food, but everybody needed support. And I forget who recommended me to Culture Aid NOLA, but I spoke with their previous executive director, Erica, and they were just eager to partner us. And when I went on site, I met Ellie. And Ellie is friendly. Ellie is knowledgeable. Ellie is efficient. Ellie makes you feel at home. And Ellie kind of like Ellie has this magic wand where I feel like you knew what would be best for the population I'm serving, and the more that you got to know me is the more that you started to curate the groceries for us. But what really made me take pause about you, Ellie, is I didn't realize that the executive director that I knew was no longer there. So I said, well, I got to meet the new one. So one Saturday, I'm going to pick up groceries, and I'm like, oh, Ellie, by the way, can you introduce me to the new executive director? Because I just want to let him know that we're so appreciative for this ongoing relationship. And Ellie says, yeah, you're looking at him. And I gained so much more respect for you then, because I was we're from the same tribe. Because you don't look at Ellie or myself because we're there working. You don't look at us as maybe one of the leaders of the organization. And I do that purposefully to let people know that the only face of leadership is the face that wants to get in the trenches and work with the people. There's no hierarchy when it comes to doing this good work. And so when you silently went into this position of interim executive director, I'm so happy for you. So let me just give y'all some tea on who Ellie is based on her bio. Ellie Duff is the current interim executive director of Culture Aid NOLA after holding the role of operations manager for nearly a year and a half. Originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Ellie grew up learning about the struggles and atrocities around her home, leading her to move to St. Louis, Missouri, and graduate from Webster University with a BA in cultural anthropology. Ellie joined Culture Aid NOLA after 1 year of serving as an AmeriCorps Vista and realizing her love for New Orleans and the community. During her time at Culture Aid NOLA, Ellie has responded to multiple natural disasters, including the COVID-19 pandemic, hurricanes, and the Arabi tornado. Before I introduce you officially, I just want to cue our first video so that all of our viewers can understand who Ellie is, but what Culture Aid NOLA does at least twice a week for food equity. Can we cue video 1, please, Fabian?
Absolutely. Lewis, I'm going to bring it back to you. Thank you. I love technology for all that it's worth. And there's probably about a 15-20 second delay. So I think Lewis just heard on his mobile to cue the video. So here he is, which is wonderful.
We live, baby. We live.
On these Nature Valley bars
Yeah.
as well. Perfect. We can do those. We'll do 3 boxes. I think this is a social media post right there. So Millie Joy, somebody. Okay, 30 cookies. We're getting your eggs. Here's this palette.
Oh, how are you today?
We doing good. How you doing?
Good.
All right.
Sweaty, but happy.
Yes. So this is just a short video just to show what I see on Saturday mornings when I arrive about 8 a.m. in the morning. Ellie, can you just briefly share your process of wanting to work with those most in need and Culture Aid's mission?
Yes, I definitely will. But first, thank you for all of your nice words, Cole. Gonna have to take you out to dinner just as well. Like, look at that. The world goes round. It all works.
Commander's Palace, honey. Commander's Palace.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Okay. But yeah, so I came to Culture Aid NOLA about, about 2.5 years ago now, 2 years ago, something along those lines. And really just what brought me to Culture Aid NOLA was the community. Culture Aid NOLA was formed right at the height of the pandemic, March of 2020. And when I came on board about 1.5 years later, there was already such a community around the organization. The previous executive director, she really was fabulous at getting some core volunteers in, and those people have spoken such nice words like you have previously to get more volunteers, more guests in our line, and just creating a community around Culture Aid. So when the hurricane happened or when there's a disaster in town, we have so many people who immediately call, text, email, how can we help you? What can we do? How can we help our community? And that just pulled me straight into Culture Aid NOLA. So I'm here for the long haul with them.
Let me unmute. So I have to be honest, when I read in your bio that you were a cultural anthropology major, I had to go look it up. I was like, I know what culture is, I know what anthropology is, but how does that work together? And so I'm so impressed. I feel like I'm gonna get to know you a little bit better, but how does your interest and expertise in cultural anthropology fuel your personal vision and your community mission with Culture Aid?
Most definitely. Cultural anthropology, the first time I heard of it, very similar reaction. Okay, I know what culture is, I know what anthropology is, but how do we mesh those together? So for me, learning that it is the study of human cultures throughout history was immediately enticing. You can apply that to so many different areas, but New Orleans is already such a historic and cultural area and city. When I moved here, it immediately was obvious that the community cares. I've had the privilege of living in a couple different places in the United States and abroad. And when something happens in those places, a couple people come out, a couple of your neighbors help you move debris off your porch, and then they go back into their homes. When something happens here, it is immediate. The entire community is out and helping you. And that was something I had personally never seen before. So as a cultural anthropologist, I wanted to stay and realize and just figure out, why is it different here? Why isn't it like this everywhere in the world, at least to all the other places I've been? So especially being from Oklahoma, you know, I've seen multiple tornadoes tear through. I actually just went back a few weeks ago because my family suffered damage from a windstorm. And it was the same thing, even though tornadoes have been happening there for hundreds of years, not many people were talking about it. Nothing was on national news that 200,000 people were without power for days and days in Tulsa. Yet when something happens in New Orleans, it's known. Everyone makes it known. We're not just sitting here, and people in New Orleans aren't just sitting here doing nothing. Everyone really comes out, which was just so different for me to experience. So with Culture Aid NOLA, it is even more significant. When the Hurricane Ida happened, immediately 24 hours later, Culture Aid NOLA was out serving 2,000 meals a day on the streets right in the French Quarter, just serving every single person who came up and needed food. Just seeing that, realizing that people really care about their community, and just being able to study that and see that on a personal level every week is really how that cultural anthropology connected back to me. It's seen even more so with the other organizations and the other groups that Culture Aid NOLA helps support. We give thousands of pounds of food to other organizations each week because everyone might not know about Culture Aid NOLA. Culture Aid NOLA can't target every single person. So exactly how you and I met, Cole, you know, the Greater New Orleans Citizens Relief Team coming in, you guys have a whole population that I don't serve and I was unaware of, and they were unaware of us. So through our connection, then that community and that population gets served. So that just goes further into the culture of how when there's communications and there's actual key people who make those connections, a great deal can happen.
You touched on so many things. I don't even know where to expand upon. But well, can you share the population that Culture Aid NOLA serves? Because when I go on Saturdays, I see other organizations like my own collecting food so that they can, you know, bring to their offices or their sites. But then I also see a line forming outside where people are waiting. So can you share like what days you operate on and also the population that you're serving specifically?
Great question, most definitely. So Culture Aid NOLA is a twice weekly food distribution. We serve, and I just say food distribution because we are actually a food bank and a food pantry. Culture Aid NOLA serves other organizations, which makes us fall under the food bank category. And then we serve individuals who come directly up to our site and we hand them food in their cars or directly into their hands. So that falls under the food pantry guidelines. So we fall right under both of those. The individuals who come through our line, though, is everyone. You know, you can't really just say it's one population, but Culture Aid NOLA, what separates us from a lot of others is the no barrier, no stigma mission of our organization. No barrier means that we are just first come, first serve. A lot of food banks and food pantries around the United States and in New Orleans, sadly, there's requirements to receive that food. You have to be a SNAP recipient and make a certain money threshold or less. You have to be a certain religion if a church is donating and giving out food potentially. You a lot of the time have to show your social security number or some type of barrier because it is government aided food. Culture Aid NOLA, we remove all of those barriers. As long as we have food and you are in our line, you are receiving the exact same things as the people in front of you and the people behind you. So the people in our line end up being a lot of folks who are missed because of those barriers at other food banks. If you make $10 more than the SNAP requirement nationally, then you can't go to a lot of food banks, but you can come to Culture Aid NOLA because we don't turn anyone away. In New Orleans, the United Way of Southeast Louisiana has a term called the ALICE population. That stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. These are folks and families who hold 1, 2, sometimes 3 jobs, but if they miss one single paycheck, they're forced to make decisions between putting food on their table, gas in their car, and just other things. One missed paycheck, it drops them into poverty. To get out of that poverty takes approximately 10 months. And surprisingly, I believe the newest numbers are about 54% of people in New Orleans. 54% are this Alice population. And that is the main population that Culturate NOLA serves. Folks who don't make enough money to go to Trader Joe's and Costco and Winn-Dixie and buy all the food, the fresh, healthy produce that's there, because especially with inflation, it's gotten very, very high, as we all know. So Culturate NOLA serves anyone, no questions asked, but it's those folks who just make too much for government assistance, but not enough to really put fresh, healthy things on their table.
You know, I want to talk about the face. You know, I think a lot of people are surprised about the face of someone that needs help, needs assistance with groceries, because I think that we're taught that you have to be unhoused, houseless, living on the street to be in need, or even just like very low income. But there are people that have well-paying jobs that on paper should be able to put food on the table. But I see it as a lack of food equity. And when I say food equity, I think that there's certain fundamental things that every person needs in order to live, like not even thrive, but just at least survive. And my organization deals with the housing part primarily, but working with you guys, we've really gotten into the food equity aspect. And, you know, a lot of food banks don't even provide healthy food options, which is why I really do appreciate Culturate NOLA. So can we talk about food equity? What do you see as maybe an issue with food equity within nonprofit, but just also within society?
Yes, so food insecurity is very high, not only for individuals, but for organizations as well. Culturate NOLA, as a food bank and food pantry, we face in food insecurity sometimes because there's just not enough food around the country getting to New Orleans specifically. There is enough food, but is it getting to the right places? So that equity, just as you were saying, Cole. Food deserts are very prevalent in New Orleans. Not sure if everyone knows what a food desert is, but a food desert is an area in which you cannot access fresh, healthy food. There might be fast food or those corner stores with bags of chips and hot pizza in the window, but not exactly as you were saying, Cole, those things that you need to live a good, healthy life. You might not be thriving, but just to live and not have more health issues and other issues pop up because of the food you're eating. New Orleans is, I would say, a city where food equity is not very equitable. There are a lot of pockets that have a lot of great access to fresh, healthy food that you see on the Food Network, and you're like, wow, I would love to eat that. You go to other parts of town and you can't even find a McDonald's for 3 miles. And that might be the best option that some people have. So Culturate NOLA, our mission is to first and foremost serve fresh, healthy produce to every family that comes through. A lot of food banks in general, they also serve just products that can sit on a shelf, peanut butter and jelly, bread, things like that, rice and beans, which are all fabulous. Those are great foods. You need those as well. Yet that's not helping the underlying causes of what is happening and causing poverty and all of these other issues. If we start targeting fresh, healthy produce and serving that over Easy Mac and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, we'll see a difference in the quality of life for a lot of people. So I'm right there with you. Culturate NOLA is right there with you on trying to serve as much fresh, healthy produce as possible to alleviate those issues as well. Our 2 locations are both not food deserts, but there's not a lot of food within walking distance, fresh, healthy food within walking distance. So once a week, we are in 2 different neighborhoods, so twice weekly, and we are allowing that community free access to fresh, healthy produce.
I want to ask you how that fresh produce is received. So, and I'm asking because in our experience, we do distribution within the neighborhood, so low-income families as well as the unhoused. And sometimes we have fresh avocados and fresh tomatoes and onions and scallion. We've had like bags of carrots, you know, strawberries, and just these things. I'm thinking, wow, like this is like fresh food that, you know, if you cook this, like it helps keep you healthy. And we've had people turn us down. We've had people turn down fruits and vegetables, where like they wouldn't turn down meat. And this is, you know, not to say that there's anything wrong with not liking vegetables, but I've almost found that some people are not interested in like those veggies, but I've seen a difference that we keep pushing it on them, like health dealers. And so over the course of like a year and a half, I don't know if they use the veggies and the fruit, or if they give it to someone else, but the people that turn us down are less now, because I'm just like, take it, it's good for you. But the reason that I do that is because I know like a healthy diet keeps you healthy. Like being a musician and on the road, I can't tell you how many years I went without health insurance. But I stayed healthy because for most of that time I was vegetarian, vegan, just really balanced, you know, the herbs and all that stuff. So anyway, how do the recipients of the groceries, do they receive the fruits and vegetables? Do you feel like you've noticed a change because they know that's what you're giving, that they've grown to like things that they may not have been accustomed to?
I would say not just the guests, but even me personally. We get some fruits and veggies. I look at it and I question what this thing is, because I've never seen it before in my life. And then I take one home, my fiance Googles it, and it's one of the best things I've ever eaten. Acorn squash, for example. I never would have eaten acorn squash and bought that in the grocery store because it just looks ornamental for, you know, October, November holiday time. Actually fantastic. But directly to your question, a lot of the time, what we have seen is when people are turning away and turning down the fresh, healthy produce, because every family that comes through our line, they receive one bag of fresh, healthy produce and one bag of pantry items, whether that be mac and cheese, beans, rice, canned tomatoes, et cetera, but each family receives 2 bags. And some families do turn away that fresh, healthy produce. After chatting with some families, it goes directly back to one of your sole purposes, Cole, of unhoused folks don't have fridges to keep that food fresh. So a lot of the time, people who are turning down that food, they're saying so because, especially in this New Orleans weather where we were just experiencing 120 degrees last week, feels like that produce that normally lasts 4 hours outside of a refrigerator is then lasting an hour outside of the refrigerator. Luckily, we have seen some families and some individuals who used to turn away that food, they're now receiving that food. Hopefully they are in a better position personally, maybe because of culture aid, maybe not, but to receive that food and actually put it in a fridge. Does everyone who now takes it actually use it? Potentially not. You know, I am on the Facebook pages. So the mutual aid Facebook pages, right after our distributions, I see a lot of our food on there, like, oh, we have a little too much of this, let's share it outside as well. But for Culture Aid NOLA, we embrace that even more because that's giving people the autonomy to take that food and then they have extra resources to give to someone else, and they can help someone else who, once again, I didn't know about and they didn't know about us, and where else is that food gonna go? So as long as people take the food, I don't think that any of it goes to waste. I do think they're giving it to someone else. Everyone knows someone who is food insecure, whether you shout it from the rooftops or secretly your teacher finds out because you don't have lunch money every single day. Everyone knows someone who is food insecure. One of my favorite things has become, I do just take home an extra bag of produce. And, oh, well, yeah, so-and-so down the street, I've got that extra onion that you texted me about. I've got that salt that you needed, but I didn't have, you know. So I do think people use all of it. I think their lives hopefully are improving because of the quality of the food. Do I have the data for that? Not 100%. But the looks on their faces are pretty good.
Wrong show. You're in luck. We're not that type of podcast. We'll Google after. Yeah, if we
there we go.
You know, as you're talking, I'm listening and I'm thinking, and I have a lot of elder friends. So like I hear the stories about like neighbors going to the other neighbor, whether they're next door neighbors in a house or apartment, and, oh, I'm out of sugar. Oh, go ask Miss such and such, or knocking on such and such's door. Can I have some potatoes? And, people doing potlucks. And I think about like this even term food insecurity, and like, when did that start? Did that start when we got less collective and more individualistic? Food and shelter, those are two things, but particularly food, because you need the fuel to do things. I'm amazed that like people deny other people food. I detest that. So like when I see restaurants throwing food out, but like refusing to maybe like give like free food to children, or like, there's all these kinds of ways that like we can work as a community and support the community and not be so wasteful. So when I think about food insecurity, I'm like, why is there food insecurity when there's so much food that goes to waste? And there's so many ways that we can actually share. So, I just love that system that you have. It's the same thing like us. We have the honor system where if you say you need more, like, we're not going to ask. But when it comes to the bags, like, we do designate bags for the unhoused first. And then we also like try to put a little lagniappe in there. Like, I know sometimes y'all have given us rice-a-roni and things to cook. And there are actually people that have access to a hot plate sometimes, or maybe they stay at a friend's house, once a week. So it's almost just to kind of humanize them and say, like, I'm not assuming that just because you stay under the bridge that you have absolutely no access. Like, if you have access, then yeah. So
right. It's like over our partnership working together at the beginning, a lot of the time I would just, give you canned goods, no problem. This is great. But then one of your volunteers and I had a really great conversation, and I was like, she said, well, not everyone has a can opener. I never thought of that personally. Oh, okay. Not everyone has a can opener. So now, first, I always put aside those pop top cans for you guys and leave the can opener ones for us. But also, last week you took quite a few that were not pop tops. So when people have access to them, they can figure it out. We get a lot of Keurig coffee pods, for example. Not everyone has a Keurig coffee pod. However, you can just poke the hole in the top and then put it in a regular coffee pot, and it's just ground coffee. So I think a lot of people get very ingenuine, like just, MacGyver it up and figure out how to use the food that we're giving to them as well. I had no idea that if you have too many onions, if they're not close to going bad, you can just put them back in the dirt, in the ground, and they'll stay good for another like week or two. Someone in my line told me that. One of my guests told me, and I was fascinated. So I'm constantly learning things from the guests in our line as well, because the ingenuity and them having to figure out what they can do with the items that we have access to and are giving them, it's incredible.
I see Fabian's mind was maybe a little blown.
Yes.
I'm the fly on the wall, just absorbing all this amazingness, and first of all, listening to the synergy that you guys both have in your individual roles at your individual nonprofits, but how significant both of you as being separate, how significant you guys are doing and the things that you're doing. The idea of being a food pantry / food bank, but also not just focusing on the non-perishables or like the canned foods and the rice-a-ronis and the mac and cheese, but also having an element of, no, we want to introduce a healthier style of eating and a healthier style of living. And, even overcoming the objections yourself, oh, what is this, acorn squash or whatever you had said,
Right.
I don't know what it is, but I'll take it home and I'll Google it and I'll figure out if I can, what I can do with it. And you taking that, I think that food education and giving people, healthier options is extremely important. Hearing your vegan and vegetarian background, 2 months without meat, so I'll throw that in there. That's important too, to impart with people that there is options when it comes to eating, and maybe they don't have that access aside from your organization, but to introduce that and to plant a seed of like, look, there's other things that they could be consuming, to diminish the food insecurities that we have. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents. The work that you guys are doing is, I'm literally blown away, sitting here just speechless. Obviously not speechless as I'm talking, but Please continue, Cole. I'll stop. I'll stop.
And we work well together, like it's always wonderful, to meet another organizer, but also not just another organizer that's like sharing the work and sharing the tips. Like there's so much wisdom in the stories. I try to share that with the youth, the medium people, and the elders. Like let's all share those stories, because everyone doesn't have to struggle, if you share those stories. So I love the concept of sharing. Ellie, I knew you were part of the tribe, but yeah, like I didn't know you could put the onion back in,
Yeah.
But
I was mind blown when they told me that, and I have tried it, and it has been successful.
I'm gonna try it. And Fabian, you did mention something. Now that we're on food equity and like the access, I've always found it interesting that organic food is higher priced. Why does it cost so little to eat poorly? I think we do know the answer. So I think about like your body is a car, and what kind of gas do you put in it? And so I look at the food that I put in my body as the fuel. And so even just kind of trying to teach people that you don't have to fill up yourself in the same way, like look at the quality of the food is better than the quantity of the food. And that's what Culture Aid really helps with. And I wanted to just kind of transition, because I know we're going to be talking so much, into the collective aspect of what we do, the volunteers, because I know your volunteers are a big part of your organization. It's a big part for me. The volunteer that you mentioned, her name is Devin. Devin started with us during Hurricane Ida, and Devin hasn't left since. And I have grown to lean on Devin, and I'm not a person that leans on people too heavy, because, I have my own personal issues with leaning, but I'm getting more open with that. And Devin is like our resident nutritionist. So she's always been super helpful with like helping us make the choices for the house and the in-house, how that can integrate. Also like thinking about like recipes. Like she thinks of so much when she thinks of the food, which is helpful, because we can get the same quantity of items, but it's like the ones that Devin gets, always like I can see so many more meals, and I'm like, but I have the snacks. Like I'm good with the snacks. So anyway, tell me about like your volunteers. What is the different faces of volunteers? Why do you think it's important for people to volunteer and participate in different forms of service?
Yes, love all of those questions. Side note, also love Devin. She is one of my favorites. We support her in everything she does. She can come to site every day. We love Devin. The faces and volunteers of Culture Aid NOLA are wonderful every single day. I see them very frequently, having a twice weekly distribution. A lot of our volunteers are recurring in what we call, and I call, core volunteers, because they are dedicated to their cores to Culture Aid NOLA. When I started at Culture Aid NOLA, there was already a handful of volunteers who came every single week, once a week, twice a week, just volunteers because it was still COVID. People had a little bit more time in their lives to go and do more community things than, before COVID or now after COVID. So a lot of our volunteers at the very beginning just were driving by our lines, saw long lines. It's a very New Orleans thing to do. You see a line, you get in the line. You don't know what the line is for, but you get in that line because it might be something good. So a couple of them just started getting in our lines, receiving food from us. And then they were like, wait, I can be helping out and volunteering. I can help everyone in this line instead of just get food for myself. So a lot of our volunteers started out just right that way in COVID, driving by, walking by, seeing that we had something to do, and they were all pretty bored, so might as well help the community. 3 years later, they are still volunteering for us, so something is definitely bringing them back. Other volunteers who have started, my favorite stories are the volunteers who used to just be guests in our line. We have one volunteer, Miss Deborah. She used to pick up food for 5 families. All 5 women had breast cancer, so they were all homebound. She would pick up food for them and then take it to them directly. She didn't need food herself, but she picked up for others and was just the little delivery service. A couple weeks in a row, we were low on volunteers, had about 6 or 7 people. We're moving a little slower. Miss Deborah walked up. She said, all right, put me to use. What can I do? I'm already sitting in line for 2 hours, so I might as well walk around and help you guys do something on site for 2 hours instead. I see her twice weekly. So many of our volunteers also were guests in our lines for themselves or picking up food for others, and decided, hey, I can be a little active, more healthy, and work out instead of just sitting here in the line. Our volunteers are amazing. Culture NOLA had over 700 individual volunteers last year, excuse me, in 2022. So over 700 different individuals in New Orleans came through and volunteered with us, and they ended up filling over 2,000 volunteer shifts. So hundreds and hundreds of people just coming out every single week. Last week it was 115 degrees. They were still out there serving with us. So that really speaks and kind of goes back to the circle of the community here in New Orleans supports and comes out every single time. When we have food, all of our volunteers are more than welcome to take food for themselves, for their, someone on the way home they may see, whichever. A lot of our volunteers, they won't touch it until we've served every single person in line. They want to make sure everyone else gets it before they get it. And you don't see that everywhere. So I see it with Devin, with your organization. I see it in all of my volunteers. It's the community of New Orleans and just people really caring.
Mm-hmm. To piggyback off of your note about one of the recipients of or community partners became a volunteer partner. Fabian, can you cue cutaway video too? Because I just want you to see, Ellie, like what happens after we leave your site with the groceries, like what we do with it.
Yes.
Yes, that's great. Lewis, I know you're back in the room. If you can cue up video number 3.
Thank you, Fabian.
This is the right video, right, Cole?
I know. Lots of mystery. Oh, your hair looks pretty.
What?
You don't feel well.
It's my own
I'm
fault.
sorry.
No, it's my own fault. Oh, that smells so fresh.
Doesn't it?
Uh-oh.
Does it? Oh.
I got 2 banana boxes.
Oh, okay. After that, all the teachers would come to me and say, Mr. Mladenoff, how do you say this? Like this.
I go down the time, but you know I gotta ask them.
Hey, Mommy, good morning. Okay.
Morning, Mama.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine, thank
And
you.
then let me make sure I don't.
Well, you know what? I got you. So maybe let's get some bags, and if you wanted to pack, do you want to pack it before you give it out, or?
I guess. Yeah.
It's up to you, because somebody could use somebody could use like a whole box.
That's right.
I don't mind that.
I don't either.
Okay. Yes. So, like 2 points. The first thing I want to say is, so we want to keep the anonymity of our unhoused and our housed partners. So the reason why we usually shoot our videos when we're doing grocery bagging and distributing is because we want to make sure that the privacy of some of our partners that living on the streets, they're kept private. because it's so wonderful that some of our recipients have now started to volunteer with us, and they're bagging and have taken ownership. So I wanted to share that with you, Ellie. But tell me, like, what do you think watching that video? Because we have that young girl, I call her Little Jackie, her name is Jacqueline, but every Saturday now she asks, you know, is Miss Cole coming? Because she wants to bag groceries. And, you know, if we have the opportunity, we take her out there to hand it out. But what do you think?
That's amazing. I love it. I mean, it's getting to be just like our site. Like, you know, I remember when you guys first started, also you and Devin being like, how do we get volunteers? It's 4 of us out here, 3 of us out here. Like, what do we do to even get volunteers? And obviously you guys are doing the right stuff, because just being your amazing self, continuing to serve every single week. She's like, okay, I want to be just like Miss Cole. Let me go out there and help pack some groceries. Like, let me do that. I absolutely love seeing it, though. I love seeing all the fresh, healthy produce, especially being like, oh, I recognize that. We gave that to you. We gave that to you. So that's fantastic. I'm just so happy with all the great you guys are doing as well. And I hear about y'all from other people of, oh, well, they came to under the bridge where I'm staying at, but I can make it over here for your distribution now. So, you know, I'm trying to take it off them because they've got other people to feed. So I'm trying to come out here. Like, so, I mean, it really does go around.
Are you serious? Do they say that?
Yes. Yeah.
What, you know how wonderful that is? Like,
I don't know the individual names, but yeah, it's so fabulous. We have a couple of individual volunteers as well who, when we have extra stuff, they go under the bridges as well over near the Claiborne area, and, you know, serve as many unhoused as possible. So it's really great that everything is going out that much.
Wonderful. You know, let's stick on this topic and this concept of collective work and how everything is full circle. And I really feel like in New Orleans, you can really see things happen in real time. Why, like, what is the culture of Culturate NOLA? Why do volunteers keep coming back? Because I'll say, you know, y'all, I feel like y'all start earlier than us on a Saturday, but it's about, Fabian, it's about like 30, at least 30, 35 people already there, bagging, like deep in it. Why do volunteers volunteer with Culturate NOLA? And why should anybody that's watching from New Orleans, why should volunteers volunteer with Culturate NOLA?
Definitely. On Saturdays, it is, yeah, about 30, 35 individuals coming about every single Saturday. We start at 7 a.m. It is crazy early, but you got to do that to beat the heat out here as well. But for 30 people to come out on a Saturday morning in New Orleans to come and volunteer for something that they don't get anything out of is so wonderful to see. Couple of things that I do here, you know, I'm not a volunteer, I'm a paid staff person and all, so a little bias on this, but I have heard that we're pretty organized. You go to a lot of places, a lot of volunteer sites in general, you might not be walking into great organization, you might not know what job you're doing, are you even in the correct location for this volunteer thing that you signed up online for? Questionable. So first and foremost, we try to stay very organized in a nice cut 3.5 hour timeline so you can get in, do your volunteer work, get out. We have partnered with so many local schools, universities, organizations, and businesses to be the recurring volunteer spot for them. So Xavier University, Tulane University, they send their Dillard University, they send classes and students every single semester. Local high schools send out their students every single semester to come and volunteer for us. And I think also one of our main things is reliability and being consistent. We are there every single week, every Wednesday, every single Saturday. We are there. The only reason we cancel is really bad weather. It's an outdoor volunteer event. So when it's raining, you can't always be outside. When it's 130, 20 degrees, you might not be able to be outside, you know, during those hurricanes and whatnot. But I think really the consistent, then, you know what? Yeah, I am available every single Saturday. I might as well go volunteer instead of, what week is it? What day is it this week? Blah, blah, blah. So I think personally, it's those two things. And then also by far, it's the community that all of them have created and the volunteers themselves have created. We have volunteers who started volunteering, as I said, 3 years ago, the first or second distribution that Culture Aid NOLA ever had. They still come out every single week. They now know all the other volunteers. They know the guests in our line. We have new volunteers who come and immediately make friends with the other volunteers. And they're like, you know what? This is my social outing for the week. It's what I'm doing now. So that sense of community as well. One guest misses, one volunteer misses, and I say, oh, well, you let Ellie know, or I'll text her, I'll pick up your bags for you and I'll take them to your families. And that sense of community really is what New Orleans is all about, I think. And I just keep going back there.
No, it's so true. Like Devin, she calls Saturdays with us her church service. And it's wonderful because it really is church. It's like, you know, from Matthew, as you do the least of these, you do unto me. So how many church people are like past the unhoused and past the in need on their way to church, you know, and turning their noses up and sit in these pews. And it's like, you know, doing the work is like, that's kind of what the church is about, I think, you know.
Most definitely.
Back to the culture though, because that's what I meant to ask you earlier. What do you think is so different about the culture of New Orleans and the rest of, I guess, the US? Like, why do you think this community involvement works here? You know, you said that you came here and just with your background in cultural anthropology, you thought, yeah, this is it. Do you know of like one reason why this community works the way it does? Because I feel the same way.
You know, without getting too political on a lot of things and dragging this conversation for another 6 hours.
We can, and we can have a part 2, 3.
There we go. We're gonna need it, Cole. Over our dinner at Commander's Palace. That's where we'll talk.
Or we can choose another location. You know, we want frou.
Yeah, exactly. But a big thing with New Orleans also is I think all of the negative that New Orleans has suffered for a very, very long time. And when places experience negative, it's either going to continue being negative and broken window policy, you know, oh, there's one broken window, let's have the whole neighborhood have broken windows, or that community is going to say, that's a broken window and we need to fix it. So everything else isn't broken. And I think with everything that New Orleans as a city has suffered, and consistently every single year, the overlooming fear that something bad is going to happen and another major hurricane, major disaster is going to come through and devastate hundreds of thousands of people's lives really does bring people together to create this culture. Being on the end of the Mississippi, and I came from St. Louis, Missouri before this, there are a lot of similarities between St. Louis, Missouri and New Orleans. You know, a lot of the culture, a lot of the influence, because the Mississippi River, they came straight down from Canada, blah, 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 rode the Mississippi down, a lot of the culture's the same, etc. But this is the one place in the United States that still embraces Cajun culture and Creole culture and talk about it, and there's museums about it. The World War II Museum, the one in the United States, being here because New Orleans built ship parts. There's so much culture that people just refuse to ignore and refuse to say, that didn't happen here, blah, blah, blah. You know, people want to remember it. I feel like not being from here, everyone says, oh, when did you move here? I say, when I moved here, and they're like, all right, so after Katrina. It's not like Hurricane Katrina is never talked about. It's talked about all the time. People want everyone to remember. And I think as long as you remember, you're not going to go back to the bad stuff. Hopefully.
Well said. So I think you're going to be with Culture Aid for a long time to come, but I'm not going to put no time stamps on it because I just know how the universe works. But right now where you are, you know, I just enjoy working with you, so I hope you never go anywhere. But what are your aspirations for Culture Aid's growth and your personal growth as well? Because I know like this, yeah, Culture Aid, it feels like it's a part of you.
Yeah, very much so. Going into as you mentioned earlier, the interim executive director role, I feel as though there's some growth coming for Culture Aid, and with that, me as well. So for Culture Aid NOLA, hopefully, currently we are doing the twice weekly food distributions. The hope is for Culture NOLA to go to 3 or 4 weekly distributions and just serve more areas, not just New Orleans and Orleans Parish, but the North Shore, the East, you know, over in all the different areas, and just expand as much as we can. Personally, I love New Orleans. I love Culture NOLA. No plans to leave right now, knock on wood, but as you said, Cole, you never know what the future holds. So cultural anthropology can take me pretty far, especially down here.
So for people that are watching that aren't your instant volunteers, I think that there is like a certain kind of person, archetype that just kind of gets right into volunteering. And then I think that others, you know, they need to build an understanding and a knowledge of like what volunteering is, why it's important to volunteer, location. You know, there is just like a formula to volunteering. I know I volunteer because that's like my way of planting. I'm not a person that like, I can't hold plants. The plants that I do keep, my cat pees in them. Mm-hmm. So I can't plant seeds like that, but I can plant seeds in my community. And I just, you know, feel like I'm a part of something that's like bigger than me, but I also feel like I'm putting into like what's eventually going to come back to me, because we're all a part of the human ecosystem. So I would ask, what do you recommend in your opinion? How does someone that hasn't been an instant volunteer in the past, but might be watching and think, you know, I don't live in New Orleans, but if I did, I would volunteer with Culture Aid or Greater New Orleans Citizens Relief Team. But maybe like, how can I find a place where I am, or maybe I want to start something? How does somebody get started with volunteering?
That is a fabulous question. I feel like a lot of people are scared to get into volunteering. If you don't start early and young, you just don't know the access and the roads to getting to volunteering. And volunteering is also it's a privileged opportunity to volunteer, because you are spending your time and taking time away from you going and making money somewhere else, or spending time with your kids, etc., to go and give your time to this organization. So there's definitely a huge privilege that comes with volunteering as well. However, for those people who do want to volunteer, it's so easy. Every organization that needs volunteers will welcome you with open arms, no questions asked. I know, Cole, you and I both will. You know, every time there's a new person who says, I signed up online, I would like to volunteer. Great, excellent. Here's the orientation. Here's some gloves. Go start sweating down there at that table. That's all you need to tell me. So I think the easiest way is just getting on your phone, getting on the computer, Google volunteer your city, and maybe something you're interested in. Food, babies, you know, there's a lot of nurseries and things that need volunteers holding cute little babies. Go volunteer at the local SPCA, something like that. There's volunteer opportunities for anything someone can imagine wanting to do. So, and if that Google search doesn't work, ask someone else who volunteers. Someone always knows someone who volunteers or does something on their weekends that, you know, oh, they go and run. Even that's volunteering for some people. Not for me, but for some.
I love how you said, go sweat at that table over there. That's a quote. That's a tweetable. You know, as we come towards the end of our program, guys, and first of all, I've learned an immense amount about the intricacies of what you guys are doing and the services that you're providing, you know, in your communities. Kind of jealous, because I wish there was more things like that a little bit closer to home where I'm at, because what you're experiencing in New Orleans is all over. And just to hear the good people doing some good work, it's really refreshing, and it's hopeful to me that there can be other people and other organizations and communities to do that. But Cole, I want to get...
baby, it's like a global movement. And so what we're doing and what we're saying is that New Orleans is a microcosm. If we can do it here in this community, we can do it anywhere. But it's about people saying that we're going to come together. Because I know what it's like to live in an inner city with these apartment buildings, and you know, you feel so disconnected. But it's like somebody has to be brave, and somebody just has to take that one step. And I'm telling you, from Ellie and my perspective and our experience, consistency works.
It reminds me of a book I read a long time ago. It's called The Art of Start, and one of the concepts in that book talks about, it takes one person or community or organization to really kind of get things going, to be the model, right? To be the working model of what's possible for everything and everyone. So that's a powerful reminder.
Yes.
Cole, I'm going to give it back to you. I'm excited to continue the conversation. Maybe there's a part 2 or part 3 of this ongoing conversation in the future. I don't want to impose on anyone, but I know there's so much that could be talked about here. I know there's so much that we haven't even gotten to in this conversation. But Cole, I'll bring it back to you to kind of wrap things and tie all things together for everyone.
Appreciate you. Well, if Ellie is down, I'm down, because we just scratched the surface, and we can really get into it. But so, I want to close out with 2 questions that just are personally significant for me, because as a musician and organizer, it's important that I take my experiences and really try to create a snapshot in the music for people to experience it maybe a little bit the way that I've experienced it. And one of those songs is Give Power to the People from my last album with the Cole Williams Band. And I wrote it in direct relation to my experience just building relationships with the unhoused, talking to them about housing, but also doing outreach in front of Grace at the Green Light right there in O.C. Haley. So I wanted to ask you, so that's our theme song. What do you think about giving power to the people? Like, how do you personally give power to the people, and what does it mean to you?
Yes, I think for my answer, it would be that Culture Aid NOLA, we don't ask any questions, and we give that autonomy back to every single person who comes through our lines. We don't make anyone prove that they are poor necessarily and need to receive food from a food bank. And that just gives them the power to come themselves and say when they do need help or they do not need help.
Oh, I love it. I'm hearing you say that you allow people to retain their dignity, and that's major. Do you have a particular story or an example where this practice of giving power to the people, where this practice of maintaining their autonomy has worked?
Yes. So as I mentioned, multiple of our volunteers are current consistent core volunteers. It used to be guests in our line. They noticed that we needed more help. And by me just being a human, talking to them, being respectful of them, not making them prove that they were poor enough to receive food, it engaged them enough to open that conversation where they were then willing to come into the organization and start putting their time and sweat into the organization and not just paying back their community and us, in a way, for giving away the food. They're like, hey, we can help you do this as well. So it's really, like you said, that dignity, that autonomy, the no barrier, no stigma aspect of Culture Aid NOLA. We are just consistently allowing people to make their own choices. And we see that every day when I get there and someone in the line says, Ellie, do you need some extra help today? I can stop standing in the sun or stop sitting in my car and I can come help you. And I think that's what it's all about.
I love it so much. I love it because, when you're doing this, work doesn't feel like work because it's from the heart. It's kind of like people ask me, like, what's your religion? And I'm like, I'm a humanitarian. I practice humanity. So, Ellie, yes. Thank you so much. Please let our listeners, our viewers know where they can find out more information about Culture Aid NOLA, if they want to volunteer, if they're local in New Orleans, but also if they want to make a donation. Can you share that information?
Yes, it's all very simple information. cultureaidnola.org, or on any social media, it's at Culture Aid NOLA. Our donate button, the best way to support Culture Aid NOLA is either physically with your hands on site or a financial contribution, and that is cultureaidnola.org/support.
Fabian?
Well, guys, with all of that, first, I just want to thank you on behalf of Rope-A-Dope, and thank you for myself too, for sharing your time, for sharing your talent, your expertise in this field, because again, like I mentioned earlier, the work that you both of you are doing is extremely significant. I mean, it's legacy. It's like once you pass on to the next place in the existence, wherever that may be, I think you'll be known for something really, really impactful to local communities and hopefully to the grander community of the global world. So with that, just thank you for that. That's just, it touches my heart, really. I do want to say we have some upcoming programming here, so I want to take a minute here just to kind of share some details and some notes that I have here on my fancy little computer. You know, and again, hopefully we can have some off-room conversations and maybe bring this back for another topic, another conversation with you guys. In September, we have September's guest is Grace at the Greenlight, a New Orleans-based 501c3 organization mission to offer New Orleans unhoused population choices while providing for their basic needs, such as water, food, clothing, and community, all in a loving manner that embraces the human spirit. So mark your calendars, ladies and gents. I will be back here with Cole Williams in September with a special guest, Grace at the Greenlight. For those of you who haven't liked and followed and subscribed, you know, whether you're on Twitter or YouTube or wherever you're watching this, please do all the likes and subscribes, please. You know, definitely follow Cole's organizations, follow Ellie's organizations and support them the best way that you can. And not sure if Lewis wants to have any closing remarks here, but if not, again, thanks everyone for your time in the Vadim space, on the social media spaces, and whether you're watching this live or on the replay, we really appreciate your time and attention. So thanks.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And give power to the people.
Give power to the people.
Yeah.
Take 9.
Oh Lord, daylight wake me, we will ride, going to the other side. Sunlight wake me, we will ride, going to the other side. Daylight wake me, we will ride, going to the other side. Sunlight wake me, we will ride, going to the golden road on the other side. I was born into slavery from my mother, feeling disrespected. She passed it down through generations. You gotta work harder, and I tried to be much better. Black sheep, she was my name. Time to unlearn the things you know and create a new day. Daylight wake me, we will ride, going to the golden road, to the other side. Sunlight wake me, we will rise, going to the golden road, to the other side. Daylight wake me, we will ride, golden road, to the other side. Sunlight wake me, we will rise, going to the golden road, to the other side. This an invitation to all who understand what is needed. It's in our hands. If you care about the world that you're living in, someday we'll all be free. Maybe someday we'll have equality. But